Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'een ya fattah ya Rabbil Alameen. So Jazakallah everyone for joining. So this would be our second and last session for the Fiqh of Zakat class. And I believe so far no one has joined online. So Jazakallah for all the people who have joined in person. Last time we spent over 1.5 hours covering a lot of things. So inshallah, I'll try to keep it under 40 minutes, but I'll still need 40 minutes to cover everything. So, okay, so last time we talked about that zakat can essentially be divided into three. So there are certain requirements and conditions related to the giver, related to the zakat that's viable for zakat, and conditions for the recipient. And last time we talked extensively about the first two, about the requirements and conditions for the giver and the zakat and the wealth that's liable for zakat. So inshallah, what I will do is that I'll do a quick recap of last time because there was a lot that discussed and there were a few questions afterwards as well. Maybe those confusions would be removed. And then inshallah, I'll get into the lecture of today that's related to the conditions of the recipients. So we talked about the conditions, and the first condition that's related to the giver is that there should be no debt on him. So there is detail to that. And we discussed that during the time of Usman radiallahu anh, what he used to do was when the month of Ramadan would come, he would announce that the month of your zakat has arrived. Subtract your liabilities from your assets, and what's remaining, if it's equal to nisab, then give zakat on that. And the fuqaha mentioned that the condition that one can subtract the liabilities is something that's agreed upon amongst the Sahaba, because no one present amongst the Sahaba did not raise any concern on that. And to pay off one's debt is considered a necessity. And we thought and we discussed that a person can only be considered rich when they have more than their own necessity. So that's why subtracting one's liabilities out of their assets is required. Then we talked about the short-term loans and the long-term loans. There were two types of loan. The short-term loans are usually with span over a period of 1 year or maybe less, and the creditor, the one who has given you that loan, can ask you for that money whenever he wants. And the other type is the long-term loans, which usually span over a period of 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, and maybe more, and the creditor cannot ask you until that time has elapsed. So these are the two types of loans that we discussed. So coming to the short-term loans, so the idea is simple. Let's say I owe someone $3,000 and I have $5,000 in my bank. I subtract it out of my assets. Remaining is $2,000, which is equivalent to the nisab value. I give 2.5% over it. So now long-term loans are a bit trickier because now they involve what do we do when we have houses on mortgages, where we have bought cars on financing, and we have student loans and whatnot. So the methodology for that is that one would deduct the non-interest portion of the installments of one lunar year and deduct it from their assets, and what remains, if it's equal to the nisab, then they will give zakat on that. So let's suppose if my monthly installment is $3,000, which would sum up to be $36,000 for a year, and my total assets are 50,000, and I'll subtract it from that, which would leave me with $14,000. And now I would give zakat on this 14,000 only. Okay, so this was something we discussed quite extensively. And then there was this question after the class raised about Islam houses bought on Islamic finance. What would the people do who have bought their houses on Islamic finance? So in the Islamic finance, the model is different. It's a musharaka, a partnership model, not a loan model. So a person would not be deducting any installments. So whatever they have after the year ends, they'll simply subtract all their loans and liabilities, and what remains is equal or more than the nisab, then they'll give 2.5% of that. Okay. Okay. So people who have bought their houses on Islamic finance, they basically are following the model of partnership, and they do not have any loan on them. So what would they do is that just simply calculate the zakat of their assets when the zakat anniversary date comes, and they basically give zakat if it's obviously it meets the requirements of nisab, and they can simply minus all of their liabilities out of it, like the installment of that month, and like other installments, like other liabilities like the insurance or and whatnot. So all those liabilities can be subtracted, and what remains can be used to give zakat off of it, which would be 2.5% of it. Make sense?
It's a kind of same, right?
Yeah, it's same. So Islamic finance, alhamdulillah, they don't have to worry about anything. And then we talked about
So I, for example, 400K the house price house, and I already paid 100K.
Yeah.
And in 1 year, let's say I have to pay another 30,000.
Mhm.
So how the calculation will be done?
So you have bought it through the mortgage or through Islam?
No, it's coming back.
No, so you don't have to do anything. So let's suppose after whatever your zakat anniversary date is, let's say 10th Ramadan, on that date, if you have your assets, you sum them all if anything, yeah. The house is not your zakatable asset. So I'll come into that. So zakatable asset, let's say for keeping it simple, your gold, silver, and your currency. Okay, so let's keep it simple. So if you sum them up, and if it's equal to the nisab value, then you basically just give 2.5% over it. That's it. Yeah. So anyone who has bought their house on mortgage, or they're financing any car and they have any student loans, etc., they will be doing this deduction and all that. Okay. And then there was this question. Yeah.
Is it 1 month deduction or 1 year deduction?
1 years of deduction.
1 year deduction.
Yeah.
You're about to pay those installments, and that's
Eh.
only principal, right?
Right. Oh yeah. I said the non-interest portion. You deduct the non-interest portion only. So the principal, let's say, is 2,500. You sum it up for 12 months and deduct it on your zakat anniversary date, and what remains just give zakat over it.
We get the benefit only if it is mortgage or anything.
It's actually not a benefit.
Sorry. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I believe, yeah, it's not encouraged,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But then if it is Islamic, then you don't have to consider
Yeah.
that.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. So the second requirement for the person is that, okay, so now given it's the opposite, let's say if any money is owed to you, now do you give zakat on that as well or not? So we discussed that there are two possibilities for that. Imkanul wusul, meaning there is hope of getting it back, or there is no hope of getting it back. So there is no hope of getting it back. It means that you gave someone some money, and now that person has basically defaulted or ran away or simply rejects that you gave him money ever. So now what would you do? So there's no hope of getting that money back. So now you can basically, you don't have to pay any zakat on that. Come the point where there is hope of or way of getting that money back, how we there is zakat on that, and there are two ways to give zakat on that. So let's suppose what I can do is that I gave someone loan over a period of 2 years. Now I will be only obliged by the Sharia to give zakat on that once I have that in my possession. So we talked about the ownership. If you remember, there are two components to the ownership. It has to be owned by me, and I should have the possession. So anything that I have owed to others, I have given as loan to others, I do not have the possession of it right now. Okay. So now the Sharia says is that you will not be obliged to give zakat on it once you have it. So let's suppose I gave it a loan for 2 years. Now, once I have it after 2 years, then I will give zakat on the previous 2 years. That's one way of doing it. The other way is that I simply include it as part of my zakat calculation every year, so that I don't have to worry when I get that money back. Understood? We discussed about this. So simply for 401ks as well. So 401ks are usually that, let's say at the age of 30, that was my first 401 contribution. And I'll be retiring at 65, and that's the time when I can pull that out. So now either I keep track of that every year on the 10th of Ramadan, which is my zakat date, that how much 401k I have, and I keep track of that, and I give zakat when I'm, let's say, when I'm retiring and I get that money. Or the easier way is that include that value every year in your zakat calculation and pay the zakat off so that you don't have to worry about it. Make sense?
Yeah, so just clarify on 401k, right?
Yeah.
Same example, from 30 years you started investment and 6 years you're going to get a lump sum. So first year I paid 10,000, okay? Second year I paid, added 10,000, contributed 10,000, right?
Yeah.
So every year, let's say 10,000 is being implemented, okay? So in my 30 years, 31st year, when I have kind of spent like, 1 year has passed on it, right? So that cumulative amount is 10,000. So I consider that
Yeah.
as my zakatable asset.
Yes.
Second year, I have added 10,000 more, but I previously had 10,000. So now 20,000.
20,000 would be
Zakat on 20,000.
Exactly, yeah.
In 32nd year.
exactly
30,000 next year.
right.
So whatever I have,
Whatever
at
you-
that point of time,
So because it's under your ownership, but the problem is that it's not in your possession right now. So now the Sharia basically gives you this leeway that either you can extend it, that once you have it, then give zakat, or just do it right away for every year. But that amount has to be kept in mind and included. Yes.
On the some 25%, deduct the 25%, because if I wanted to withdraw now,
Yeah.
they will take 10% and then another tax of 7% or something.
Mhm.
So based on that value or based on the actual value?
Yeah, so I have seen two fatwas right now. So one says that you don't have to make any deductions. So whatever you have right now, that's your ownership. The other fatwa is that based on, some estimate, you can subtract and consider that number as your yearly contribution. So now I think I'll leave you guys to decide what you want to do for yourself.
even if like the other scenario, we're not paying it monthly, yearly, we are paying it, keeping track of it and paying towards the end.
Right,
Correct? So in that way also, I need to keep track what was my
exactly,
31st year, 32nd year, 34th, 32nd, all of those 30 years.
right,
And then accumulate and pay it that time.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's not like only one time paying at the end.
No, but you'll have to calculate for each year. So
Exactly.
yeah,
exactly.
let me go back to this. We
Ultimately, you end up
we
paying
s-
same thing, it's just.
We saw this, right? Let's say on 2022, I had 1,000 in my 401k. So the zakat on that would be $25. Let me make it more simpler. And let's say on the next year, I had 2,000 in my 401k. The zakat would be $50 on that. Similarly, for the next 2 years. Now, if I was to add up all the zakat that's obligatory on me, that would be about $225. So that's why you'll have to sort of maintain a record of what you have and how much zakat that's basically would be
Right.
applied on that. Got it?
But I think preferred would be to pay as we go, right? Because
Yeah.
What if you die?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, so the condition starts that's related to the wealth that's liable for zakat. So it should be more than one's necessity. So we talked about that the zakat, the phenomena of zakat is that we take it from the rich and give it to the poor. And a person cannot be established as a rich person only and only once he has more than his necessity, more than his needs. So anyone who is just meeting all of his necessities and do not have the zakatable asset, despite having all the houses and the cars and etc., he will not be classified as a rich person. So rich is one who has more than one's necessity. So the wealth, the zakatable asset should be more than one's necessity. So that's something we discussed last time. Okay, so the second condition related to the wealth was that it should meet the nisab threshold. And what was the nisab threshold? For silver and gold, it's mentioned, and the Sharia has basically defined it. For silver, it's about the approximate dollar value is $630, and for the gold, it's about $8,085. So if someone has silver only, they'll use the silver nisab, and if someone has gold only, they use the gold nisab. So now what happens if someone has a mixture of some silver, some gold, and some currency and some trade stocks as well? So now what would happen is that for that we'll use the silver nisab, because the silver nisab is more beneficial for the poor. The pool size of the people who will be giving zakat would increase and more people would be helped by it. So now the equation is quite simple. You add up all the assets, you calculate the value. If it's equal to the nisab of silver, which is $630, and a year has passed over it, you just simply give zakat on it. Okay. The third condition related to the wealth was a cycle of 1 year should complete on it. I think this is clear to everyone. And then we talked about, does decrease or increase in wealth during the year has an effect. So let's talk about decrease first. So let's say on 10th of Ramadan, I got $1,000, which is greater than $630, the nisab, and now I am sahibud nisab. And the date that I'll be paying zakat would be the 10th of next year, 10th Ramadan of next year. So even though during the year my assets are fluctuating, it does not matter. Let's say even if it goes down below the nisab value, let's say in Zilhajj I got $500 only. So it does not matter. What matters is at the start and at the end. If the end of the year I have enough wealth that is equivalent to the nisab, then I'll have to give zakat on it. But let's say if all of the nisab of all of the assets are lost, let's say I invested $1,000 in a business and I lost all of it, now this cycle would be broken. And once I get the nisab again, then a new cycle would start on it. Make sense? Rashid bhai. Okay.
I'll come to that. Maybe
Okay.
I'm confused with one logic, so.
Okay. Okay. So the other thing is, if the wealth increases, al-malul mustafad. So the wealth increase can be of the same type or can be of the different type. It's similar. So let's say I got $1,000 and 3 months after which I got more $1,000 more. Now I do not have to maintain a separate cycle for this new $1,000. I would simply club it with what I have already, and on my zakat date, I just give zakat on all of it. But let's say if it's of a different type. Initially I had $1,000. Now 3 months afterwards, I got 100 grams of gold. So now what I can do is that I can have a separate cycle for that and a separate cycle for the $1,000 that I have. So in this way, I can have two different cycles that I can maintain. But for ease purposes, if anyone wants to sort of merge these cycles together and use anyone as, which has the starting date as above, which starts basically early in the year, they can use that. So 10th of Ramadan, I can use it as my zakat anniversary date, given the goal that I got was in Zilhajj, right? Make sense? Okay. Okay, so now this one I thought we talked about a lot, and I think this is very crucial to understand because most people have confusion around this, that do I have to give zakat on my house, on my property, or there is extra cars that I have. So what does this mean? So if we were to divide our wealth into two, we can basically divide into two categories. One is beneficial only through trade, meaning that I'll have to trade it with something, only then I can benefit from it, meaning money, currency. I cannot eat that money, I cannot drink it, I cannot use its shelter. The only way I can benefit from it is that I'll have to trade it for something to fulfill my needs. The other thing is beneficial through multiple ways. For example, a car. A car can be used to sell and make profit off of it, and can be used for commute purposes as well. Now it is multi-purposes. So if anything that has benefits through multiple ways, if the intention at the time of the purchase, this is very crucial to understand, if the intention at the time of the purchase was to sell, then this would become beneficial only through trade, and this would be considered as zakatable. So essentially, zakatable is all your assets that become beneficial only through trade, because now they have this ability to grow, which is also known as al-malun nami. Now they basically have this ability to grow over the period of 1 year. So currency, you can basically invest it and it grows over a year. Similarly for trade goods, now they have this ability. So the zakat is applicable to such kind of assets that have this ability of growth. And now if I was to sort of give you an exhaustive list of what your zakatable assets are, that would be gold and silver, because the Sharia has defined them so: currency, 401k, stocks, crypto, and your trade goods. So all of these come under zakatable assets. So even if, let's say, I have 100 acres of land, but that's just sitting there, that's not for the purpose of selling, I do not have to pay any zakat on that. Let's say I have diamonds, I have sapphires, rubies, emeralds, or you name it. I have expensive watches, but none of that is for in selling purposes. At the time of buying them, I did not intend to sell them. There is no zakat on that. So zakat is only on goods that you bought at the time when you bought, you intended to sell them, and besides that, those assets which are beneficial through trade.
Somebody is rich,
Yeah,
if he can just keep on buying more land,
yeah,
and he's not making intention to sell it,
right.
so then he will be exempt from paying tax,
Tax.
meaning the zakat, right?
Yeah, he'll not have to pay zakat on the land that he's just buying it for investment purposes. For
If it's investment, it's still,
no investment, I'm just securing my money, right? Let's say I'm just putting my money in an asset that I think would be beneficial in the future, or I can give it to my children. There could be multiple ways, right? At the time of buying it, if my intention is not to sell it, then that wouldn't be considered zakatable.
now, for some reason, maybe 5 years down the line, he ends up selling that due to some necessity.
Okay. Now that the money that he got, he'll pay zakat on that. That's it.
Okay, not on the yearly, like we do.
Right, yeah. So let's say, yeah, obviously not on that. Let's say I had a land for about 10 years. After 10 years, I sold it. I sold it for $100,000. Now I give zakat only on $100,000, not on the 10 years that I kept and on the value of that land. So that's not the case.
This cycle thing is confusing me. What I do, like what I have been doing all along, that I fixed a date of first Ramadan,
Yeah,
and whatever is my total saving
right.
on that date, I give zakat on that.
Yeah,
I don't really care that what was like my wealth like 6 months back or 7 months back.
yeah.
Is that okay? I mean,
Yeah.
this cycle thing is really confusing for me. When you said that 1 year cycle.
So the cycle is basically that, let's say on 1st of Ramadan till the next of 1st of Ramadan, that's your one cycle, 1 year cycle, right? That's what I meant when I said cycle.
So, just a question related to that, right?
Mhm.
So let's say last year, 10th Ramadan, I was doing some, like, I did my accounting, okay?
Right.
All of my assets, everything, particularly I'm talking about the cash asset, okay?
Right.
If I have bank account, and let's say last year or 10th Ramadan, I had 10K in my bank account.
Right.
Okay? Now, this year, 10th Ramadan, I will check my bank account, right? Let's say this year it is 20,000.
Mhm.
Now, I think we saw a clause, or we hear that you should have 12 months passed over it until it is eligible for zakat,
Yeah.
right? So, I'm trying to understand, should I be considering the 20K now for zakat?
Yeah.
Or since that 10K was there, 20K is from this year, not yet 12 months, have not yet passed, right?
Yeah. So over here, if you see, the increased wealth can be of the same type. Let's say I initially had 10,000. Now I have an increase of another 10,000. So now what I would do is that on my zakat date, I would sum all of it together, because the increase is of the same type. Let's say, but you got something else. You got gold or silver, right? That's a different type. The jins has changed now. For that, you can have a separate cycle. But that's up to you as well. If you want to keep all of that under one cycle, that's fine as well.
The cycle of 1 year should complete on money. So, as I said, right? Last year 10K, this year 20K.
Right.
So I should be considering 20K as
Exactly.
for my zakat purposes.
Right.
But then what does the cycle of 1 year should complete mean?
The cycle of basically, let's say on 1st of Ramadan, I got $1,000. Now I've become Sahibun Nisab, right? So now I have to give zakat after 1 year. Now this cycle has to complete of 1 year. No matter what happens during the year, it does not matter. The money can fluctuate, right?
Okay, so the cycle is since you become Sahib al-Nisab, from that
Till the
you have
next.
to give that point 1 year after that,
Exactly.
and you have to evaluate the assets at that point of time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Make sense? Yeah.
How about ornament, ladies' ornament?
No zakat. Oh, if it's of gold and silver, then there's zakat on that.
Like year after year, you just keep paying?
Yeah. Yes. You don't have to pay, your wife has to pay. So, okay. So, okay, now going back to this. So now everyone understands what a zakatable asset is and what a non-zakatable asset is, because I'll be now using this word moving forward. So is everyone clear on this? What is a zakatable asset?
Yeah, can you give some examples of non-zakatable?
Anything. My phone, laptop, I have diamonds, Rolex watches, I have Lamborghinis, whatever.
So, okay, going back to the same question, if I am a super rich guy,
Yeah.
I can just buy, just keep on buying, just
Yeah.
to avoid paying zakat.
No, but you'll have to pay zakat on some sort of currency or anything. You have that, right?
The remaining only, right?
Yeah.
Basically, that is a loophole. That was I was talking
Yeah.
about in the last.
So I'm saying,
That is a
because I
loophole.
know I started and on 10th of Ramadan, I'm liable to pay.
Yeah.
Before 10th of Ramadan, I go and buy super diamonds, like I had 1 million, I spent 900K on something and I'm just paying the on 100K.
So simply the way of
Yeah.
avoiding that you don't keep it in form of zakatable assets, buy any non-zakatable assets, buy land, buy diamonds, buy jewelry,
Yeah.
and you will not gold and silver, anything, buy cars,
Yeah.
and you will not be zakatable. That's a loophole which I am also very surprised about. So I don't know, but that's what the Sharia is saying.
But then obviously anybody who is mindful of Allah will not do it.
Yeah, obviously.
That's it.
Not for intention, yes.
Yeah, it's all by intention.
So I'll give you an example. So one of my teachers, I think he told me that what and husband and wife, what they used to do was that, let's say the wife had gold, when the zakat date would arrive, she would give the gold to the husband. Now what has happened is the ownership has transferred. Okay, now the husband is the owner. So when another year would pass and the zakat date would come, the husband would give it back to the wife. So now you can just simply, there are ways to sort of play around, but again, so there are ways, yeah.
Sure. One more question around land. As you said, when you buy a piece of land,
Mhm.
let's say I bought a piece of plot, okay?
Mhm.
That time my intention was maybe the long-term investment,
Right.
okay? So that means it's still eligible for the car.
No, it's not.
I mean, if it is with the intention of investment, long term,
No, at the time, what, right.
Maybe after 10 years or 15 years, I'm going to sell it.
then it is
The intention was to sell it, then obviously it would be
Okay, fine.
zakatable.
Yes, it will be zakatable. But let's say down the line, 2-3 years down the line, I decided rather than selling, I'll give it to one of my kids.
Right.
Does it stop there?
So now you are basically, intention was initially to sell it and you are giving zakat every year, and after 10 years, now you want to give it to your son.
Yeah, I decided no, I
So
will
now-
keep it.
huh.
Now I will.
So now the ownership has transferred, right?
Okay.
It's not under your ownership anymore.
No, but still, not, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that I bought a land, I kept it for 10 years with an intention that I will sell it after 10 years. But after 10 years, my intention changes and I said that I'll keep it for my son whenever he grows up. Still, it's in my possession. Yes.
No. But if the initial intention, what was that?
It was to sell, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, but now let's say, after 5 years, and every year I was paying, let's say, zakat on that, since it was, you were intending to sell it, make profit out of it, so you were calculating, considering for zakat, okay? But 5 years down the line, now you say, oh, no, I don't want to sell this in future, I would rather give it as a gift to my son or my daughter. So from that point, I
Yeah,
don't have to consider.
yeah, from that point of view, then it would not. It's yeah, it's similar. Let's say I bought a car, and let's say I bought with the intention to sell it, but I like the car, and now I thought that maybe I should keep it for myself. So yeah, it's similar to what you just said.
Will it may go other way around? I bought it for intention of not selling it as, but later on, my intention changes to sell it.
Yeah, but once you sell it, the amount you make off of it, then you'll give zakat on that, not on the asset.
So one point of view I've heard is intent is one, but they say if you put it in the market, then you are kind of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, because let's say if I have it and but it's just under my possession and I don't know what I'm going to do it with it. But let's say I put it on sale on some sort of website and it's up for grabs for on that website. Now it's for the intention or for the selling purposes. Then it would become a zakatable asset because my initial intention was to sell it and I've put it to sell as well.
Even if it is like you want to sell down the line, but you don't have to pay zakat until you put it in the market. So now you are in action that you want to sell.
But that is one way. Let's say my initial intention was to sell it.
After down 10 years or 5 years.
Okay.
Long term, but.
What about if I buy the land and I don't know, I don't have the land, bought it, but if only I will sell if I need it.
Yeah, then it's not zakatable then. Yeah.
So where you have not made intentions, because you don't know. Generally, when we buy property, we do not know.
Right.
Sometimes you say, okay, if I'm making good profit, I'll sell that point of time, or I can build a house, or I can give it to my relatives or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So if that kind of thing is there, you don't have to. But if it is up for market, as soon as you put it, it becomes a zakatable asset.
And at the time of the purchase, when you purchase it, your intention was to sell it. That's crucial. That's why I'm mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah.
The key question that they're asking is that you bought with the intention of keeping it for yourself, but 5 years later you made the intention change.
Yeah.
Now I want to sell it, but you have not put it on market. So
Right.
for another 5 years,
Yeah.
your intention is not to sell, but it's not in the market. Do you still have to pay zakat for
No,
those next 5 years?
no, it would not be zakatable. It's similar. I gave that example.
Okay, so you sell, but I'm not putting it on market for another 5 years.
Yeah.
Only when I put it, then I will have to.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay on the profit or
No, on the market value of that land.
Sale and it got sold after 2 years, so 2 years you have to give the zakat.
Even if it doesn't get.
No. No.
No.
At the
If
time.
I put the market for sale, and it only materialize after 2 years.
Yeah.
Next 2 years, I have to pay the zakat, right?
But again, going back to the initial point, did you buy it with the intention to sell it initially? No, then there is no zakat.
I know what brother is saying is if you put it in the market, you don't have anybody to buy it.
Yeah.
So it's still in the market for like 2 years. So you have to pay for 2 years, right?
So let me give an example. I bought some land not with the intention to sell it initially. After 5 years, I thought I should sell it. It would not become zakatable even if I put, let's say, on a website and it's up for sale for 2 years. It would not become zakatable. That's why I said if the intention at the time of the purchase, when you're getting that thing, buying that, if the intention at that time is to sell, only then it would become zakatable.
so in this case also, the example which you gave, you did not make intention to sell.
Right.
You bought the property. And after 5 years, you put it on market. 2 years, it did not go. After 2 years, the plot, whatever, the land got sold.
Yeah.
Now, are you paying or not paying on this?
On the money you got, you will have to pay, but on the 2 years that you put it on market, you'll not be paying any zakat. on that.
But if the intention in this case was to sell,
Initial at the
Initial
time,
intention.
yeah.
then for the 2 years,
No, but then you're basically summing up for the 7 years now.
okay.
Because for 5 years it was in my property. Now it's 7 years now, right?
Okay.
Understood? Initial my
Like 401k.
I think there's some confusion over here. So there are two things. I bought it with the intention not to sell it.
Not to sell.
After 5 years, I made the intention to sell it, and then it took 2 years. For that 2 year period, I do not have to give any zakat. It's a non-zakatable asset, right? And after 2 years, the money that I got, then I'll have to pay zakat on it. This is one scenario. The second scenario is at the time of the purchase, I bought it with the intention to sell it. Now it took 7 years to sell. Now I'll have to give zakat on every 7 years. Every year I'll be giving zakat on that. Got it? Now makes sense? Currently, we're still in the last week session. Okay, so now Alhamdulillah, we'll go into the this week's session. Okay, so what is this about?
This is all helpful questions.
Alhamdulillah. So now, if we were to sort of categorize people by their economic status, they would be categorized into rich and poor. But there are some details to what rich means. So one type of rich would be obliged to give zakat. This everyone understands, right? So far, anyone who possesses zakatable assets which are more than one's necessity, that person would be considered rich, and after 1 year they'll have to pay zakat on it. So far, everyone's clear on that, right? Arshad bhai.
Sorry, I do not hear.
Yeah. Anyone who possesses zakatable assets which are more than his necessity would be considered a rich person, and after 1 year they will have to give zakat on that. Everyone understands this? Okay, so now the second type of a rich person would be that he is neither obliged to give zakat nor obliged to take zakat. So now what does this mean? So he possesses zakatable assets less than the nisab value, but has non-zakatable assets which are more than his necessity and its value is equivalent or more than the nisab. There are a lot of things that I've presented away. So let's take an example. I have a house, that's my necessity. I have a car, that's my necessity. I have furnishing in the house, that's my necessity. And I have all the necessities that I need. But my zakatable assets are less than the nisab. Okay. But there is one non-zakatable asset, like a plot that I bought, which is more than my necessity, that's sitting over there. Now, this person is not obliged to give zakat, but neither can he receive it. Understandable?
Yeah. It's the same case where the person having 1 million puts 900K in some land with no intention to sell.
Right.
So, and he just has like very little in hand.
Right.
And he has, but non-zakatable assets are.
Yeah, that's a good example. So one had 1 million and pretty much invested all of them in land, and now he has zakatable assets which are less than the nisab, which is less than $630, let's say. And now he is not obliged to give zakat, nor is he eligible to receive zakat. Understood, everyone? This is important. Okay, now these are the two categories, and what leaves us with is the third category, which is the poor category, the faqir, which basically whose zakatable assets are less than the nisab. So that's everyone understands that, right? So let's say if I have a car, I have a house, and I own all of that. Let's say I have 2 cars, and all of them are being used. I have good clothing, I have good shoes, I have good furniture, I eat good, and everything, let's say, and all of that is under my necessity. But my zakatable assets are less than nisab, and I don't have any non-zakatable asset as well. I'll be considered a poor person. Understandable? Subhanallah. We need serious students.
Your person is doesn't have any zakatable assets other than his necessities. And necessities are his livelihood, house, car, furniture, everything. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
Other than that, he doesn't have any asset which is more than nisab. So he will be considered poor.
Yeah.
Let's say he's earning 1 million every year,
Hmm.
but he's spending everything in his family.
Yes, that.
Yeah.
He's not eligible to receive the car, but he's also not
No.
eligible
No,
to.
in this case.
No, in this case,
He's
he's in the poor case,
He's spending all.
Yeah.
And
and has no and does not have any non-zakatable assets as well. Or let's say if he has, but the value is less than $630. Then in case he would be in this category, otherwise he would be considered poor, faqir. Yeah.
So I guess, one point of view, they say Islam encourages this is because it's against hoarding money versus investing this. If you just hoard money a lot, obviously you have to end up paying more for that.
Hmm.
Versus you invest and spend it elsewhere, you won't, right? So because even if you have gold, you pay like 2.5% every year, right?
Hmm.
40 years, you're done, like maxed out everything.
Yeah.
So that's, they say it's just to encourage Muslims to invest rather than just saving money.
No, but what would happen to the poor then? Let's say if everyone is just investing and the poor are out.
That's excess.
Yeah.
Rather than just putting in your account,
Right.
invest that money, right?
No,
Not to avoid zakat, but.
No, but you said that Islam encourages that. I'm not sure about that because Islam encourages that you help out the poor. Because in this way, what would happen is that if I'm, let's say, investing all of that in non-zakatable assets, I don't have to give any zakat, right? So now I'll be not helping any poor people.
Yeah, it comes from intention, I guess. Like if you have more assets, you can still help out the poor. So.
Okay.
That is the loophole. That is the loophole. If I have $1 million, I have made $1 million, but I don't keep it in any zakatable form, in any zakatable asset.
Right.
I purchase any non-zakatable asset. I will not be eligible to receive the zakat. I still not be helping poor.
Yeah.
The zakat will not apply. to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the loophole. That's what I am not very.
No, but that person can give charity as well, right?
Charity is something
Yeah, it
that's
does not mean that they cannot give any charity, but they
charity is
can.
not obligatory.
Yeah. Yeah, zakat is obligatory, but you are right. Yeah, absolutely. So everyone's clear on this, right? Alhamdulillah. Okay, now coming to the main lecture, recipients and their requirements.
Just, I think I understood the last one. Just one thing here. If how many houses a person can have as a necessary?
As a necessity.
As many as four.
Four wives.
Four in the contract.
4 wives in 4 houses.
No, if person has one wife only, how many houses?
No, but
Let's say, okay, I am here.
At least 2 houses, like for example, he has a car.
No, I'm here. I have a house here. okay?
Yeah.
Back in India also, I have a house.
Yeah.
I have one more location. I have a house there. So let's say, oh, so because let's say my native is Latur. I have a house there. Actually, that's my dad's house. Okay, but I have in Hyderabad. I have let's say one house, and I have one house here.
Yeah.
So can those be because when I'm in Hyderabad, I generally use that.
So you use that, right?
You use that.
But now it's part of your necessity.
Okay.
So there's one example that, all of us got those expensive sherwanis stitched at our walimas, and it's sitting there for, let's say, about 30, 40 years. Now, that's something, that's something we'll say that that's more than your necessity because you're not using it. So now, in order to consider that as a necessity, once in a while, just wear it. and maybe come to the masjid and, show us all what you wore on your walima.
But you have to fit into it all.
Yeah. So, okay.
Okay, so if you're using it,
That considers as your necessity if you're using it.
Multiple cars using it.
Yeah.
It's considered necessary.
Necessity. Alhamdulillah. So recipients and their requirements. So in this verse, there are 7 recipients where have been mentioned, and I have marked each with a different coloring scheme. So inshallah, we'll go over them one by one. So the first is innama sadaqat lil fuqaras, and the second is wal masakin. So fuqara and masakin, they are essentially the same, but fuqaha have basically differentiated them slightly. So fuqara, the poor, they basically say that anyone who has less than the nisab wealth, and he's just making his way work and does not ask anyone for help. Hasn't raised his hands in front of anyone. The miskin, they say, is that he's in such a downtrodden situation that he now has to ask people for help. So this is a very, I would say, a subtle difference between fukara and masakin, but essentially they are the same. Sorry. Okay. Understood? So the two recipients are fukara and masakin. So the next is wal amilina alayha, to those who are employed to collect them. So now what is the reason behind that? That why these people who are appointed to collect zakat are eligible to receive out of that zakat money. So the reason behind the illah behind is that the imam or anyone has appointed them to collect that money, and now they are basically occupied with this occupation and they have left and they are not allowed to earn from themselves. So now during this period while they are occupied with the necessities of others, now this makes them eligible to receive some part out of the zakat. Understood? So everyone's make sense? And if I add more to it, based on the same reason, the nafaka of the wife is obligatory on the husband for the same reason, because the wife now has occupied herself with the needs of the husband and his children and the house, and she cannot go out to earn for herself. That's why it's obligatory on the man to provide nafaka of his wife. Understandable? So the reasoning, the illah behind is same for both. Moving forward, inshallah. Wafir riqab, in the cause of the slaves. So it's not applicable right now, but I'll still mention over here. There are different categories of slave, but over here it's meant mukatab. Mukatab is the one who has been asked by his master that if you bring a certain amount of wealth, you'll be set free. So anyone who has been given this leverage by his master, a zakat can be given to that person so that he can earn his freedom. The next is wal gharimin, those encumbered with debt. Now it means anyone who has debt on him, or anyone there's debt due, debt that he is owed. Meaning, let's say if a person is poor and there is debt on him, we can help him with zakat to alleviate that debt from him. And in another case, let's say if the person is poor, but there is some money that he is owed. There's someone basically owes him money and he hasn't given him money, but he is in a poor situation. Now he can also be given zakat. So it goes both ways. Understandable for the person who is in debt or there's something owed to him. Okay. Wafi sabilillah, this is the sixth recipient. This includes anyone who is striving in the path of Allah, and given the condition that person should be poor, meaning he can be striving in the path of Allah by doing jihad. And by this also means any act of obedience. And someone is, let's suppose, acquiring knowledge, but he is poor. Now he becomes eligible for zakat as well, because he comes under this category, fi sabilillah, and the condition is that he should be poor. And the last over here is wabn sabil, the wayfarer. So the example to understand is that anyone, let's say, who is in a foreign land and he has now lost all access to his assets, he's lost all his cash and there is no cash in hand and there is no credit cards. Now this person at that moment, despite having a lot of wealth back home, at that moment in this foreign city, in this foreign land, he does not have anything. So now he is also eligible for zakat, the wayfarer. Understandable? Okay. So these are the 7 recipients. So is there anything that I'm missing over here? So والمؤلفة قلوبهم, sorry. So there is some detail to this. What does this mean? So zakat can be given to those whose hearts are to be won. So during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were 3 types of al-mu'allifatu qulubuhum. One was that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was used to give money to the kuffar so that they could accept Islam. So this was a incentive for them so that they could come into the fold of Islam. The second was that when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw any weakness in the iman of someone or saw any nifaq, and he gave money out of the zakat of the Muslim to that person so that his iman may increase and he become more steadfast on the deen. This was the second type. The third type for which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to use the zakat of the Muslim was he used to give zakat to certain people in an agreement to protect the Muslims from the evil. So there were certain leaders of the Quraysh who would disturb and harm the Muslims, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give them zakat, money out of the zakat of the Muslims in order to come to an agreement that don't harm the Muslims. So this is the context for which al-mu'allifatu kulubuhum comes in. So now moving forward, during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, this is important to understand, two individuals, Uyayna ibn Hisn and Aqra bin Habis, these two individuals who accepted Islam during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they fall under this category of al-mu'allifatu qulubuhum. They were given money and they accepted Islam and came into the fold of Islam. So now during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, they came to him and they thought that, this applies still, and they asked Abu Bakr radiallahu anh to give some money, to give some piece of land to them, so that they could do some farming on it and they can benefit from it. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, what he did was he wrote a letter and allocated that land for them, for both of those. So now these two individuals came to Umar radiallahu anh. So Umar radiallahu anh, when he read that, he basically, after reading it, he tore the letter apart. What he said to those two individuals was that during the time of Rasulullah, you were given out of so that you could come into the fold of Islam, and Islam was weak at that time. But now Islam has strengthened and is strong. Now we do not need this anymore. Now either you stay steadfast on the deen or we'll fight with you. And then he asked Umar radiallahu anh that on what basis that you basically gave these two individuals land out of the wealth of the Muslimin, of the zakat of the Muslimin. So that was a point when Umar radiallahu anhu contested the decision of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and when these two individuals then went back to Abu Bakr and they said that, are you the Khalifa or Umar radiallahu anhu is the Khalifa? So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that, inshallah, inshallah he'll be the Khalifa. So and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did not contest the decision of Umar, and it happened in front of other Sahaba as well. So now the Fuqaha say that there's ijma of the Sahaba that this does not apply anymore, that for just to win people's heart, we cannot give out of the zakat of the Muslimin. So this is only the right of the poor Muslimin. Understandable? Okay. Alhamdulillah, we're just about to close then. So a few miscellaneous things then. Zakat cannot be given to non-Muslims. We should be clear about this by now. To the rich, to the parents, grandparents, which are also known as usul, cannot be given.
That's how we give zakat money
Hmm.
to non-Muslims so that he will not harm the Muslims.
Yeah.
So, then why we are saying that zakat cannot be given to the non-Muslims?
No, but that I said that al-mu'allifatu qulub, these are three types, right? So they were given during the time of Rasulullah. After his demise, now Islam is strong. Now the illah is no longer there. The reason is no longer there. Now what they say that this hukum is saqit. It does not apply anymore.
It was not applying anymore that over at a time of Sahaba. But what about now? In places where Islam is weak, then is still that this can be applicable or that one is altogether.
No, but I think we are. How is Islam weak? We have 1.5 billion strong. No, but-
a minority, but we cannot say Islam is.
Yeah, we have 1.5 billion strong. That's a spiritual or a knowledgeable problem, but in terms of number, they are there, right? And initially, the purpose was that more people would come into Islam and the strength would grow. And during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and moving on, the strength only increased. Okay. So zakat cannot be given to children, grandchildren, and anyone who is below the hierarchy, which is also known as furu, and it cannot be given to one's spouse, cannot be given to masjid or any institutes, any construction of any institute. Now, let's say, can it be given to an educational institute? Given that educational institute then gives it to the poor, or hospitals, then it's given to the required personnel, only then it can be given to them. And then we talked about Banu Hashim, the zakat cannot be given to those. Okay, how much zakat can be given to the poor? So now the answer to this is that, let me give the answer and then I'll go into the detail of this. We cannot give, the zakat should be less than the nisab. Okay, now I have made a statement. I'll try to explain it through some example. So let's say there is a poor person who has to give his rent and has to buy some grocery as well. And let's say he says that I need $1,100. And the nisab actually is at $630. Now, can I give him $1,100 or not? The answer to this is because I can give him $1,100 because that would be needed to fulfill his necessity, his core necessity. The thing is that what should be doing is that we should give it enough so that once he uses all of that in his necessity, he does not become a sahib or nisab after that. Make sense? Let's say if I gave him $5,000 and now he used, let's say, $3,000 on all of his necessities, on rents and everything, now he's left with $2,000. Now he's become sahib or nisab. So that's something which is not recommended. And what should be done is that it should be make sure that after that the person should only have enough that's less than the nisab. And another example, if someone has a loan of $10,000 and he is poor and he's struggling, now I have to give $10,000 as zakat. I can give all of that to him because even he fulfills his necessity, he'll still not become a sahibun nisab. Understandable? Alhamdulillah. Before giving zakat, one has to make sure that the person is eligible. So what we have to do is that we have to try to perform due diligence as to the person is eligible for that or not. Once we have the ghalibuz zan that yes, this person is eligible, we can just give zakat on that, zakat to that person. We don't have to get into the nitty-gritty details and get me your bank details and tell me each and everything about you. If we see apparently that this person is eligible, then we can give zakat to him. That's the only that's the only effort that we have to make. And there's one more thing, that if later you found out that person is not poor, actually, he tricked you in some way, now you do not have to give zakat again, because you did what you had to do and you gave the amount that was obliged, and so the ada would be done from your side. Okay. So, and it should be localized to the best of our ability. So we should try to find people who are eligible for zakat near us. Brother Asif, I think, shared a case over there. That person is one of our community members and he needs help. So I think that person deserves our attention and we should try to look after him. But let's suppose if for some reason you have to, the fuqaha say that if there's a case where you have to move it to the other city and there is some relative of you that needs money, needs your zakat, needs your help, and he is poor, in that case you can do that, because now there are two things: as-silatur raham, that you are basically strengthening the blood knots, and you also have this zakat as well. So now the reward would be twofold for that. So for that purpose, if your relative is poor and you will have to transfer that money to abroad or to somewhere else, then you can do that.
based on the relatives, right? So we know, let's say, if we have relatives who are poor, like for the daily wage earners or whatever, they came in loss and they're struggling in their life, but we know they have, like, if they, let's say, 2-3 tolas of gold, or their spouses have it. But they're still struggling to get their daily necessities for daily food and all.
Yeah.
Would they be considered the Catholics?
Yeah, but we just have to say if they do not have the nisab, then they are basically eligible for that. If the woman has, let's say, 7 tola or maybe more than that, then the woman would not be eligible. But let's say the husband does not have that, the husband can be given zakat.
Okay, so it is not the combined asset of the
No,
family?
no. Each individual who is baligh would be considered separately.
Now, if let's say we give to the husband, and what he does with the money is spends on spouse or
Yeah.
kids, it's his.
It's his one. But if he falls under the category of poor, then zakat can be given to that person.
Even if wife then
Let's switch it up as well. Let's say the woman does not have any zakatable asset, but the husband is rich.
correct.
Now, in that case, the woman is poor, she can receive zakat. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So I think we are done, but I think there were a few questions as well from last time. Do you want to go over them, or we should just stop over here, I think. Okay.
I think we should go. Quickly we can go.
So yeah, you got it. Got tired? Yeah, I got tired as well. I think you didn't heard what he said. He said we have to go to our 4 houses. Okay. So the first question was zakat is obligatory on them, parents plus spouse. It means they are wealthy. So why should we pay from our own wealth? They should sell their zakat eligible assets and fulfill their obligations themselves, and we are responsible. Then why we are? So you are not responsible for that. We talked about this earlier as well. So that the husband is not obliged to give zakat on behalf of her wife, and so is the case.
But if he pays.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, and there's one thing the woman should know, that the reward would go to the husband. So yeah, it would be paid from on behalf of her. Yeah, but the reward would still go to the husband. So that's something we should. The woman should be encouraged to do that. I know a few women that they simply.
What they will do, they will lend the money from us.
That's what they're getting a relationship.
Yeah.
But wisdom.
Okay, so now going forward, if I gave loan to someone and return is not planned and more than 1 year is passed, should I pay zakat on the loan amount which I didn't get back yet? If I get loan amount back after 5 years, should I give zakat for 5 years? So who would like to answer this?
Just you already have to.
Okay. And the last thing I didn't understand is if the company economy is missed. I think we were discussing about the stocks. That's where someone asked this question. So, okay. So I think most of the questions that we have in this survey as well are covered. And I think we can end, alhamdulillah. So this was a long course. Hopefully all of you benefited from it. Alhamdulillah. So alhamdulillah. Wa akhiru dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallah for joining.
All your patience.
Jazakallah.